They gave me 10 minutes to stop being their son. 10 minutes to pack up 16 years of my life because my girlfriend was pregnant and I was just a kid in 10th grade who made one mistake. I still remember the way my father flipped our family photo face down like he was burying me alive without a funeral. My mother stood there, arms crossed, watching me drag a suitcase across the marble floor she once said I would inherit. That night I slept under a streetlight instead of a roof. 20 years later, those same parents walked into my son's hospital lobby holding designer gifts and fake smiles, calling him their grandson. But what they saw next was not the boy they abandoned. It was the man their cruelty created. My name is Ethan Cole, and this is what happened when karma finally came home. Before I share my story, I want to know you are here with me. If you've ever carried a story that changed you, share a piece of it in the comments. Tell me what this story makes you feel or what moment in your life it reminds you of. Sometimes when we share, the weight becomes lighter for all of us. Thank you for listening. And now, here is my story. And if my story touches you, if you have ever felt thrown away but fought your way back, please subscribe. Every story like mine reminds the world that second chances are not given, they are earned. My name is Ethan Cole, and the night I stopped being someone's son began with rain tapping against the glass like a countdown. And I could not stop. Savannah smelled like wet wood and wax polish that evening, the kind that clings to memory long after you have left a place. The chandelier over our marble foyer burned too bright, the crystals scattering light across the room like 1,000 eyes watching me crumble. My hands shook so hard I almost dropped the third pregnancy test onto the marble floor. It is positive, I said, my voice smaller than I had ever heard it. Linda, my mother, did not even flinch. She just crossed her arms, her diamond bracelets catching the light. No daughter-in-law of mine, she whispered, and no bastard grandchild either. My father, Richard Cole, CEO of Cole Shipping Group, did not raise his voice. He did not need to. He turned toward the clock above the mantel, the old pendulum swaying like judgment. You have 10 minutes, he said flatly. Take what fits. Leave your keys on the table. I stared at him, trying to find a face I recognized under the marble mask he wore. Dad, please. I started, but his hand was already on the family photo that hung above the fireplace. He flipped it face down. The scrape of the frame against stone sounded like a verdict. Linda tilted her head as though the act were tedious housekeeping. I wanted to scream that Emily did not ruin anything, that I loved her, that I would take care of the baby. But their silence was a wall. My father disappeared upstairs and returned moments later carrying a small leather suitcase, the one they had bought for my college tours. He set it down by the front door with clinical precision, then adjusted his Harvard ring. 10 minutes, he repeated, checking his watch like he was timing a board meeting. My throat burned. I remember staring at my reflection in the glass of the grandfather clock, my face warped by its curve. Somewhere behind me, the maid hovered in the hallway, frozen between duty and pity. Linda finally spoke. You will thank us one day, she said, as if exile were a lesson in gratitude. I packed blindly, one hoodie, a notebook, the pen my father had engraved with my initials, E.C. I left the trophies, the framed certificates, the life that was supposed to mean something. When the front door closed behind me, the click of the lock was louder than thunder. Rain soaked me before I reached the gate. The house glowed behind me, white columns gleaming like teeth. I thought of the portrait lying face down on the mantel of my father's perfect tie knot, of my mother's cold perfume. 10 minutes. That was all the time it took to erase me. I walked down River Street toward the river, the suitcase bumping against my knee, water seeping through my sneakers. Somewhere in that darkness, something broke, and something else, something fierce, began to take shape. A thought I did not yet have words for. If I ever saw them again, I would not beg to stay. They would be the ones asking. I woke to the sound of footsteps and a voice soft as the rain had been harsh. "Child, you will freeze to death out here." For a second, I thought I was dreaming. Dawn in Savannah was gray and damp, and I was curled beneath the gazebo in Forsyth Park, my suitcase serving as a pillow. The woman standing over me wore a long cashmere coat. Her silver hair was swept neatly back, a small white poodle at her feet. I pushed myself upright, embarrassed by the state I was in. "I am fine," I lied through chattering teeth. "No, you are not," she said simply. Her eyes studied me the way a mother studies a fever. "How old are you?" 16. "And where is home?" I did not answer. She sighed, the kind of sound that carried both weariness and decision. "Then come with me. Baxter and I hate eating breakfast alone." Her name was Margaret Whitmore. The car smelled like lavender and leather. The heated seats felt like mercy. When she drove us through River Street, the city still slept, the lamplight turning wet cobblestones gold. Her house, Whitmore's house, sat on a corner lot wrapped in magnolias, a grand old building that looked like it had been waiting for someone. "I lost my daughter," she said as she unlocked the door. 5 years ago. Her name was Sophie. She led me upstairs to a room that seemed frozen in that loss. A crib assembled in the corner, a closet filled with maternity clothes still tagged. I stared at them, unsure whether to feel comforted or haunted. Margaret rested a hand on my shoulder. "This is yours now," she said. "No questions, no conditions. Everyone deserves a second chance." The first breakfast I had there felt unreal. Scrambled eggs, toast, hot tea. The silver clinked against porcelain, a sound so ordinary it made me ache. Baxter sat at my feet, his tail brushing my ankle like a heartbeat. "You will stay," Margaret said, as if it were already decided. "You will finish school. You will work when you can. I will handle the rest." I wanted to protest, to tell her I did not deserve it, but the words stuck in my throat. She only smiled. "Gratitude will do, dear, not guilt." Later, she showed me around the house, the study lined with cookbooks and framed menus from her restaurants. The hallway of family photos that ended with one picture of Sophie Whitmore, bright-eyed, her hands resting on her rounded belly. "She would have had a boy," Margaret murmured. "She loved stars. That is why the nursery ceiling is painted with constellations." That night, lying beneath those painted stars, I thought of Emily and the baby she carried. I thought of my parents' house, its windows still glowing, and wondered if they even remembered me. Before turning off the light, Margaret lingered at the doorway. "From the day Sophie died," she said softly, "I kept this room ready. I never knew for whom until now." She closed the door gently, and for the first time in 3 days, I slept without fear of the morning. When I woke, sunlight spilled through the curtains. Baxter lay curled at my feet like a guardian. Downstairs, I heard dishes, the faint hum of a radio. For a long moment, I just sat there staring at the crib in the corner, the blank page of my notebook, and the pen engraved EC, still mine, still here. I was not ready to call Whitmore's house home, but as I looked around, I realized it was the first place that had not asked me to leave. Standing before Sophie's portrait later that day, I whispered a promise to the girl in the picture, to the woman who had saved me, to the child not yet born. I will not run again. Outside, the air smelled of magnolia and salt. Inside, Baxter slept under the crib. The past still echoed, but for the first time, its voice was fading. The kitchen at the Harbor Light Bistro was its own kind of storm metal clanging steam rising. The rhythm of knives on cutting boards was like a drumbeat that never stopped. I started at the bottom, scrubbing pans and stacking dishes until my arms ached. Margaret insisted I learn every station before touching the register. "You want to build something real, Ethan?" she said, wiping flour from her hands. "You learn it from the floor up." So I did. By day, I cleaned grease traps and carried crates of produce. By night, I studied online for my GED with the same pen my father had engraved years ago. Its metal body now scratched the letters EC, still visible under the light. That pen was proof I existed before they erased me. Margaret ran her restaurant empire like a quiet orchestra. Every sound had meaning. The hiss of sauce, the ticking of timers, the soft scratch of her pencil as she balanced profit margins in the ledger. "Money is memory," she told me once. "Keep track of where it goes, and you will know who is loyal." She showed me how to read invoices, calculate waste, and track labor costs. I never understood how grace and discipline could fit inside the same person until I saw her turn failure into ritual. One night, while closing the restaurant, I met Daniel Hart. He was there to update Margaret's will. He looked too young to be a lawyer, his sleeves rolled hair falling slightly over his brow. When Margaret went upstairs to fetch documents, he lingered near the counter where I was tallying receipts. "You are her apprentice?" he asked. "Something like that," I said. "She saved my life." He nodded, scanning the ledger I had been working on. "You are good with numbers," he said, then added softly, "Good thing numbers never lie." We talked for an hour about school online courses and the kind of freedom that comes with a diploma. He did not pry. He did not pity me. That silence of understanding was more comforting than any sermon. Winter came heavy that year. Emily was 8 months pregnant and still working part-time at a diner near the docks. The night the storm hit, the city froze under sleet. I was finishing my shift when Margaret called. "She is in labor," she said. "Meet us at St. Augustine Medical Center." I remember running through streets that shimmered with ice, my breath slicing the air. When I burst into the hospital, Emily's face was pale, her hair damp with sweat. Margaret held her hand, whispering something about strength being louder than pain. 18 hours passed. Flashes, machines beeping, nurses calling out times, the metallic smell of antiseptic mixing with rain. At dawn, when the storm quieted, a cry broke through the room, raw and perfect. Emily looked at me with eyes half closed and said, "His name is Noah." I nodded, unable to speak. Margaret cut the umbilical cord herself when Emily asked her to. It was like watching a circle close, one woman giving life, another giving back what life had taken. We registered him as Noah Bellamy Cole. I signed the papers with shaking hands, the pen pressing too hard against the form. Outside, snow fell in lazy spirals. Margaret touched my shoulder. "You are a father now," she said. "Do not let fear make you small." Back at the Harbor Light Bistro, I took night shifts again. I would rock Noah to sleep in the mornings before class and cradle textbooks beside his crib while he dreamed. The kitchen became my second home. The heat and noise were a reminder that survival had a sound. The tattered apron I wore carried stains of tomato sauce oil and sweat proof that I was building something with my hands. Margaret's will kept changing every year, adding new names, protections, and instructions. She said it was to future-proof love. When Noah was a few weeks old, Daniel stopped by with more papers. He handed me a list written in neat legal script. "Keep these documents safe," he said quietly. "Birth certificate, lease work records, anything that proves continuity. If they ever come back, you will need evidence." I frowned. "If who comes back?" He hesitated. "Your parents," he said finally. "They did not just throw you out, Ethan. They filed an emancipation order." The words felt unreal. I did not know then that those papers would one day become my shield. That night, while Noah slept in the crib Margaret had kept ready for years, I stared at the ceiling, painted with constellations, and listened to his breathing. Fear and joy twisted together like the weather outside. Margaret peeked in, whispering, "Sleep now. Tomorrow you cook breakfast." Baxter the old poodle curled near my feet. For the first time in months, I was not running. I was staying. Time passed in montage. Noah's first steps between the tables of the Harbor Light Bistro, my GED certificate taped to the fridge, late-night talks with Daniel turning into quiet companionship. We were no longer just survivors. We were a family that built itself from ashes and flour. For 20 years, peace had become routine. The Harbor Light Bistro thrived. Margaret's restaurant spread across Georgia, and Noah grew into the kind of man people wrote articles about. He was 28 now, one of the youngest chiefs of pediatric cardiac surgery. St. Augustine Medical Center, a prodigy in scrubs who made miracles look methodical. Life had settled into something gentle mornings by the river dinner with Daniel, the house echoing with quiet instead of ghosts. Then, one evening, while chopping herbs for stew, I heard my own last name on TV. Dr. Noah Bellamy Cole. The anchor announced the youngest cardiac innovator in Georgia. The screen filled with his photo hymn, smiling in surgical blues. The subtitle glowed beneath the only son of the prestigious Cole family. I froze the knife still in my hand. I had not heard that phrase, the Cole family, in 2 decades. Daniel walked in from his office, saw my face, and turned toward the TV, just as the next segment played my parents, Richard and Linda, at some charity gala in Savannah, giving interviews about how proud they were of their brilliant grandson. By morning, the story was everywhere. Social media posts, press releases, photos of my father shaking hands with hospital donors. Then came the package delivered to the hospital. A mahogany box gold ribbon inside a Rolex, a Mont Blanc pen, and a first edition of Gray's Anatomy. The note read, "From your loving grandparents." Noah brought it home, confusion written all over his face. "Dad, should I thank them?" he asked. I stared at the watch gleaming under the kitchen light. "No one gives gifts out of love," I said, when the last thing they gave you was the door. A few nights later, a reservation appeared at the Harbor Light Bistro under the name Alan and Claire Winslow. Something in me already knew. When I walked into the dining room, I saw them immediately, Linda's emerald ring catching the light, Richard's posture as stiff as his suit. They looked older but unchanged in essence, polished like marble, hollow like it too. I approached their table as if they were any customers. "Good evening," I said evenly. "Can I get you started with something?" My father looked up, his expression unreadable. "We need to talk about your son," he said. "He is your grandson," I replied. "And you had your chance 20 years ago." My mother straightened her pearl necklace. "We made mistakes, but family is family." "Not this one," I said quietly. "We only serve food here, not forgiveness." Then I walked away, leaving them sitting in silence beneath the chandelier Margaret once picked out herself. A week later, Linda went on WJCL Channel 9. Her voice trembled perfectly for the camera. "We just want to make amends," she said, dabbing at tears that never fell. "We forgive our son. Family always finds its way back." Daniel and I watched from the living room. He paused the video and smirked. "They forgive you," he said. "That is not grace. That is confession." Within days, reporters surrounded St. Augustine Medical Center. They called Noah the prodigal heir, speculating on family reconciliations. He came home exhausted, still in scrubs. "Dad?" he asked. "Who are they really?" I looked at him, at the steadiness in his eyes, and felt the weight of every secret I had carried. "They are people," I said finally, "who chose reputation over love." He nodded slowly, not pressing further. But that silence between us was heavy, charged with questions he would someday demand answers to. I lay awake that night, staring at the ceiling, the hum of the city outside blending with the sound of my heartbeat. The past was not just knocking anymore. It was breaking in through the front door. Daniel closed his laptop, later turning to me with that calm precision I had come to trust. "They just made their biggest mistake," he said. "By saying they forgive you, they admitted there is something to be forgiven for." I exhaled, my hands trembling slightly. Then this time I said, "We do not run, we fight." He reached across the table and took my hand. "Not on their terms," he said. "On yours." As the night deepened, I stood by the window watching the river moves, slow, steady, unstoppable. The reflection of the city lights shimmered across the water, bending but never breaking. I realized then the battlefield was not outside anymore. It was the name I had tried to bury the blood that would not stay quiet, the ghosts who had mistaken forgiveness for ownership. The Coles wanted a legacy. I wanted peace, and only one of us could have both. The call came at 2:30 a.m., the hour when the city forgets to breathe. I was in the Whitmore and Langford office, the coffee machine humming, spreadsheets open, when Richard's name lit my screen. I let it ring until the voicemail clicked. His voice poured out warm as bourbon. "I just want to meet my grandson." I deleted it before the sentence finished. An hour later, the morning news ran a soft focus segment. Billionaire parents asking for forgiveness. Pearl soft lighting. Linda tilted toward the camera like a repentant saint. I muted the TV and stared at the river through the window until Daniel slid a thick folder onto the desk. "They just opened the gate," he said. "Let us walk through it." He keyed open the Whitmore's house safe, pulled a sealed envelope, and laid a notarized scan beneath the lamp. The heading had a date burned into me like a brand, 2005. Relinquishment of all parental rights and responsibilities toward Ethan Cole and any offspring born or unborn. I traced the signatures with my eyes not touching the paper, as if skin might contaminate the truth. Richard's bold initials, Linda's careful loops. It was not memory punishing me anymore. It was ink. My email pinged. Gavin Reed. Subject line: "We should tell Noah the truth. I regret everything." I almost laughed. Daniel skimmed the headers, tapped a key, and turned the laptop toward me. "Sent from a Cole Shipping Group internal address." Daniel said, "He is not repenting. He is billing." We dug deeper, a buried thread between Gavin, Richard, and Linda. Language dressed in corporate linen about rehabilitation and legacy. Ethan's sentimental one-line read, "Lean on family. Offer $6 million and a board seat." There was an attachment labeled Image Restoration Plan, a $700,000 payment to Gavin for playing the part of a contrite father. It was not a reunion they wanted. It was a product launch. I found Noah asleep on a vinyl couch in the hospital family room, still in scrubs after a 20-hour shift. When I touched his shoulder, he woke instantly, all focus. "Dad," he said. "They sent more gifts." He hesitated. I checked my birth file and records. "There is a name under father." He swallowed. "Gavin Reed." The room felt too small for both of our heartbeats. "Why did you not tell me?" he asked. I chose the hardest sentence, "because they did not earn you." He held my gaze, hurt, cutting, and clear. And then something steadier rose behind it. "Then tell me now," he said. "So I can protect Mom, so I can protect what Grandma Margaret built." For the first time he called Margaret Grandma without stopping to measure it. Back at the house, Daniel lined the evidence across the table like a map. The relinquishment, the emails, the payment schedule. "This is more than harassment," he said. "It is a coordinated campaign to trade on your son's name." He opened another file, password protected, stamped with Margaret's estate crest. The video flickered on Margaret at her desk in a silk scarf, eyes bright, voice unshakable. "My darling," she said, as if she could see through time. "If they come back, remember paper is a sword. Justice is not kindness. Justice is light." The will language beneath the video was spare and lethal. "Any person who abandoned me or mine forfeits all claims, money, property, brand, future benefits. There would be no buying their way into our lives with donations and photo opportunities." I stepped outside for air. Wind rippled the river, slicing neon into moving ribbons. I thought about that marble foyer, that clock, that suitcase. They pushed me out in 10 minutes, I said when Daniel joined me. I will give them 10 minutes to see the truth. He nodded. We start with the Riverside Medical Gala, he said. If they want a stage, we will give them one with every light turned on. I looked back at the house where Noah slept and felt fear give way to purpose. Justice was not going to knock. I would open the door and walk it in. We watched the second video from Margaret that afternoon, the room washed in amber from the Tiffany lamp. She was laughing in that soft way she had when she was about to say something sharp. If they return, she said, offer them a stage. They will do the rest. Daniel paused the frame on her smile and outlined the plan. Riverside Medical Gala public audience, controlled evidence, every document authenticated and ready. We are not ambushing, he said. We are clarifying. I wrote the invitations by hand. Dear Mr. and Mrs. Cole, please join us for the launch of the Margaret Whitmore Foundation and be recognized for your family's place in our story. For Gavin, your presence is requested for parentage clarification and to close all remaining questions in the open. Each envelope bore a wax seal, Margaret's crest pressed into deep red. Alongside the stationery, Daniel and I built a portfolio, the original relinquishment with its witness marks, the email chain printed with server headers, the restoration plan detailing payments, and a draft of a restraining order ready for filing. Nothing dramatic, just light. A nurse from St. Augustine Medical Center called that evening, her voice nervous. Linda had approached the foundation office. She said, she is offering a $15 million donation if we facilitate family access. Daniel did not blink. Then we facilitate, he told the coordinator calmly. Please seat them at table 1 in front of the main screen. The nurse exhaled, half scandalized, half relieved. I can do that. At dinner, Noah pushed his plate away, restless. Do we have to take it that far? He asked. Maybe they really did change. I reached for his hand. Remorse does not start with cameras, I said, and it does not end with a hashtag. He looked down, nodded, and finally said yes to delivering the keynote. He did not ask what would happen after. He trusted the shape of our silence. Near midnight, my inbox chimed again. Gavin had sent a link and a single line. This is everything. The file was a recorded boardroom video. Richard at the head of a polished table, Linda at his shoulder, a slide deck behind them. Reading the Harrison, then catching himself. Cole Heritage Program. We reclaim the narrative. Richard said, grandson on stage. Reconciliation photo. Pre-IPO goodwill. They spoke in the clean grammar of commerce about a human being who had once slept under a streetlight because they told his father to leave. Daniel watched it once rewound and watched again, his lawyer's mind clicking into place. Thank him, he said dryly. Their best piece just became ours. He reached into the safe one last time and drew out a document I had not seen before, a narrow envelope with Margaret's handwriting. It was a final power of attorney contingent on a single condition. At the moment Noah delivered his speech, control of $18 million in assets, and Whitmore Consolidated Holdings would transfer to the Margaret Whitmore Foundation for Whitmore Parents with Noah as executive director. Board structure, locked beneficiary language, sealed challenges pre-answered. No one could hijack what was not ours anymore. Daniel said, "It belongs to the mission." I walked the house after midnight the way I used to walk the dining room before service, checking corners, setting the tables of a life. In the nursery that had once held a crib, Baxter's old bed still sat under the window. I heard Margaret's voice in the quiet. Keep your ledger straight. In the hall, I paused at the family photo we had taken last Christmas. Daniel had set it upright in its frame. No marble, no gloss, just 3 people who stayed. Morning brought a pale sky and the smell of the river. I pressed the wax seals onto the last 2 envelopes and stacked the evidence folder beside them. The invitations looked almost beautiful. Calligraphy curved over heavy paper red stamps drying like small hearts. On the top card in the lower margin, I wrote the line Margaret used to end her letters. For family, for truth. I knew they would come. The word inheritance is a bell. People like my parents cannot help answering. And when the lights rose on that room, there would be no performances left, only paper and time, and 10 minutes to look at what they had signed. The Riverfront Convention Center glittered like a jewelry box when we walked in chandeliers, throwing stars across the marble jazz, humming just below the chatter of 600 guests. Daniel's hand found the small of my back as we crossed the foyer. At the far end, my parents were already performing. Linda in white Chanel and pearls. Richard in midnight wool-shaking hands with reporters, as if the last 20 years had been nothing more than a scheduling conflict. Noah stepped out behind us in teal scrubs instead of a tuxedo, and the room shifted whispers flaring like matches. I leaned to him. "You chose the right uniform." He nodded once and took the stage. Tonight, he said, voice steady in the hush, "I want to talk about family. Not the one you are born into, but the one that stays when you fall." The LED behind him lit with Margaret's portrait and the words, "Family is a choice." Polite applause, then stillness, as Noah told the story of a 16-year-old boy thrown out for getting someone pregnant. I felt the air turn toward table 1. Richard's knuckles whitened around a flute. Linda's hand strangled her monogrammed handkerchief. "If they gave my father 10 minutes to disappear," Noah said, "then tonight I am giving them 10 minutes to hear the truth." The screen flickered to Margaret at her desk, scarf-knotted eyes bright. "If you are here, Richard and Linda, welcome. Listen for the clock. 10 minutes is very fast." The room went quiet enough to hear the cameras breathing. Daniel climbed the stairs with the leather case. He did not dramatize it. He simply laid the original relinquishment under the document camera and zoomed in on the signatures. Relinquishment of all parental rights and responsibilities toward Ethan Cole and any offspring born or unborn. He read, then continued with Clause 6, the one that chained their decision to every generation. The wake of it rolled through the hall. Reporters lifted their lenses in unison. "That is fabricated," my father snapped, half rising. Daniel did not even look at him. "You validated this exact document 3 months ago when you forwarded it to Mr. Reed," he said evenly. The LED filled with emails, subject lines, dates the sentence about pressing the right buttons, the $700,000 retainer for a redemption performance. Gavin stared at the tablecloth like it might swallow him. A murmur swelled outrage recognition, the sound a room makes when a mask falls off all at once. I stepped up beside my son and took the handheld microphone. 20 years ago, they gave me 10 minutes to erase my name from their house, I said. Tonight, I need 10 to remind them that paper weighs more than blood. 2 uniformed officers and a process server came down the aisle as the house lights rose. The wall clock over the balcony ticked to 8:47. "Start the count," I said. One of the officers handed over the emergency orders. No contact, no approach, 500 feet. Linda broke first tears, finally spilling. "We will sue," she choked. Richard barked red, blooming up his neck. Daniel did not even raise his voice. "You just sued yourselves." Camera 7 swooped toward table 1. A forest of phones tilted to catch the wreckage. The officers stepped aside to let them leave under their own power. 6 minutes, Daniel said, mildly checking his watch. They shuffled past the donors who would not meet their eyes, past the board members who suddenly had new priorities. At the doors, my father turned as if to say something that could unspool time, then saw his name on the papers again and kept walking. The room rose to its feet and clapped not because of punishment, but because light had finally reached every corner. When the doors sealed, Noah faced me, his mouth a line that was not angry anymore. "Now I understand the boundary," he said. "Not for payback," I told him, lowering the microphone. "For prevention." The stage lights warmed from white to amber, and the screen changed to the crest of the Margaret Whitmore Foundation. Applause softened into attention as the program moved forward, not around the wreck, but through it. The news cycle did its work in the 3 weeks that followed. Coal Shipping Group stock dropped 35% after the family scandal crawled across every business channel. The board called an emergency session and escorted my father out of his own conference room by lunchtime. Linda stepped away from every committee that had once announced her name with trumpets. Online, a nickname stuck to them like rain to brick the 10-minute parents. Another lower third ran beneath Gavin's mugshot facing a federal probe tied to bankruptcy concealment. I did not celebrate. I felt something settle in the world the way a shirt fits better once you clip the tag. A letter arrived from the Church of St. Matthew on crisp stationery addressed to the Coles with a request that they remove themselves from leadership for conflicts with stated values. Daniel read it and gave me the ghost of a smile. Gravity, he said. It works. In court, the temporary orders became permanent. The judge's tone was academic, his language exact. The original relinquishment, the chain of emails, Margaret's video, the boardroom recording, each piece nested into the next until there was nowhere left to stand. They can appeal, Daniel said, as we walked out under a blue Savannah sky, but certified originals and a dead woman's clarity are a hard thing to argue with. We filed our last set of fees, and I signed the transfer of my remaining Whitmore Consolidated Holdings shares to the foundation. Ownership slid into mission exactly as Margaret intended. Ground broke on the Whitmore Family Center on a bright Saturday with the river throwing coins of light against the pilings. 20 apartments for Whitmore parents. On-site childcare. A study hall with the ceiling painted in stars like the nursery where my son once slept. Noah spoke to the small crowd, not like a prodigy, but like a man who had walked through weather. 17 years ago, he said my father slept under an awning. Tonight, and every night after this opens someone else's child will not have to. I watched him and felt something in me I had never had a word for loosen and lift. That evening, we ate on the back porch grilled fish Noah had seared perfectly, a bottle of wine we had been saving for no particular reason. The river breathed cicadas stitched a low hum through the dark. I took a thin silver ring from my pocket, old as my first ledger, simple as a promise. Margaret told me to say what I want, I said to Daniel. Palms open. Do you want to stay officially? He laughed the way a man does when he is already home. I have been staying since the first time you said thank you. The ring slid into place like a key finding the right lock. Later, in the soft light of the living room, I lit a candle beneath Margaret's portrait. You were right, I told her. Justice does not need a blade. It needs a switch. On the console, we had a new photo, me, Noah, and Daniel, shoulders touching eyes unguarded. The frame sat upright as if it had always been that way. The old pen with my initials lay beside it. Its scratches now caught a kind of shine. I thought of the 2 clocks that had measured my life. The grandfather clock that watched a boy step into rain and the ballroom clock that watched those who sent him out step away. 20 years apart, same hands moving one way. They gave me 10 minutes to disappear. I gave them 10 minutes to look at what they had signed. Blood had failed me. Kindness had not. And the river, indifferent and faithful, kept running toward the only place it knows forward, where the light is. Some stories are not about revenge. They are about reclaiming the right to exist. I lost everything in 10 minutes, but it took 20 years to understand that peace is the real victory. If my story touched something in you, if you've ever had to start over to forgive or to fight for your place, I'd love to hear from you. Share your thoughts, your feelings, or your own story in the comments. Every shared voice reminds the world that we are not alone. Stay with me and let's keep telling stories that heal.